All right, so what I have here is a few vintage NOS EL34 tubes, and I really wanted to make this video about the Telefunken EL34 tubes. I'll talk about these two a little later. And before I talk about these tubes, I just want to say that when it comes to NOS tubes, I was of the opinion that NOS tubes are really expensive because of how rare they are and not necessarily for their sound. And so when I first started with tubes, I went for the newer generation tubes, Russian tubes, Chinese tubes, and I thought they were great and they sounded good and I was happy with them. But as you know, part of the appeal of having a tube amp is to tube roll and try different tubes to find the sound that you like, as each tube, each brand or time period has a different sound signature, and it's fun to change a set of tubes and you have a brand new amplifier because it sounds so different. And so that led me to eventually try some NOS tubes. And what I found was I personally preferred the sound the older the tubes got. So that led me to the NOS tubes for my Marantz 8B. And I'll talk about these a little later. Like I said, I want to talk about the Telefunkens that I love. And I want to show you what I have here and the differences. These two are the same tubes. I'll get to it a little later. But these three tubes that I have, they are all Telefunken EL34s, but they're also very different. And I want to talk about those differences. Two of these are original Telefunken tubes. One of them is not a Telefunken. And I want to show you how to tell the difference between the original Telefunken tubes and the non-Telefunken tubes. Now, this tube I have is the earliest tube I have, and that's from the late 50s to early 60s. This tube here is from the early 60s to mid 60s, and this is from the 70s. And this tube is not the original Telefunken. This is actually an RFT tube, and I'll tell you how you can determine that. So when we look at the labels, as you know, anybody who knows tubes, now, before I say that, I'm not a tube expert or a tube seller. I'm just an audiophile who likes to collect good tubes and listen to good tubes. And I've just learned enough to be dangerous, I guess. But I've crawled through various different forums and websites to learn enough about these tubes to make a meaningful decision in terms of what I get and how to look for the right tube and so on. So anybody who knows tubes knows that the labels can provide great information. There's a lot of information in labels and date codes for us to determine where the tube is coming from, how old the tube is, and so on. And also, those who know tubes know that labels mean nothing sometimes. And that's when certain manufacturers produce tube for other brands. So you could have a brand that didn't make a tube and rather in today's terms, outsourced it and acquired another manufacturer's tubes and put their own logo or label on it. So you can have a Telefunken that's not really a Telefunken, and vice versa. You could have an RCA that's a Telefunken, for example, and so on. So you also need to look at the plate structure, and that's what we'll do here real quick with these tubes. So on the surface, these tubes look very similar when it comes to the logos. They all say Telefunken. They all say made in Germany. And that's accurate because they're all made in Germany. However, these are the original Telefunkens made in West Germany, and this is made in RFT. This is an RFT tube made in East Germany. So technically correct, made in Germany, but not an original tube. And sometimes you may end up paying for what you're thinking is an original tube, but it's not. So this is a great way to determine what I will show you to determine whether it's an original Telefunken or not. So let's look at the first tube here. This says it's got a nice logo, Telefunken logo, made in Germany, EL34, and a date code. Now about Telefunken logos, they are notorious. This silkscreen or whatever this print is notorious for rubbing off and wearing off. So oftentimes you'll find Telefunkens that don't have labels. Only the NOS or a new in box sort of tubes still have their logos intact. A lot of the used Telefunkens will have their logos with various states of just not being there, erased off and rubbed off. And what helps in that case is to understand and look at the plate structure as well. But in this case, we are fortunate. This is a really good NOS tube, testing better than new. I have a quad of this set. This is my favorite set of tubes right now on my 8B. I have a pair of these and an additional pair of these that I run as a quad with these that I'll talk about. So we have a logo, the Telefunken logo EL34, and this date code. Now this is a long 7-digit date code that Telefunken introduced in the 57, 58 time frame. Before that, they used to use 2-digit date code for the year and month. And there's a way to decode this and decipher this. And I actually had made an Excel formula where I could just type this in and it kind of decodes that with the formula I made. And in simple terms, tells me what year, month, and day. But while doing it, I learned the date code enough to just do it in my head right now. So starting with the letter, the U represents the Ulm factory in West Germany. Sometimes it comes with a B code. B stands for Berlin, U stands for Ulm. Good West Germany plants, really consistent, high quality tubes. And then this long 7-digit code. The good thing is you could ignore these last 2 digits. These are internal batch codes, no bearing on the date. So we only have to worry about these first 5. And the first 2 are the day of the month. The 3rd and the 5th is the month of the year. And this 4th one is the most important with the year code. And they don't have two digits for the year, they just have 1. So it makes it a little challenging, but knowing the tube and knowing the plate structure of the tube will tell you which particular decade it belongs to. So this is the one's position for the day, 10's position of the day. So this 80 becomes 08. So that's the 8th day of the month. To determine the month, you have to look at the 3rd and the 5th number. So 07, and which is actually in order, which is, in this case, this was opposite. This was 1s and 10s. This is 10s and 1s, so 07. So 8th of July, that's pretty good so far. And now we looked at the 4th number, the most important in terms of the year. We get an 8. With the 8, you kind of have to determine the decade. Well, with EL34s, it's easy to do because they only made so many different kinds over the decades. They didn't make any EL34 tubes in the 70s, so we know Telefunken has stopped making them. And this is really late, 78. So it cannot be 78 is my point. It could be 68, but when you look at the internal plate structure, this particular tube with the 5 staples and the single rectangle slot on the plate is a very early design. This was right after their metal plates from the mid-50s. This was the first iteration of the bakelite, this dark brown, almost black looking base. So this can't be 68, so it has to be 58. So this is a July 8th, 1958 tube. This is a lot of good information, but let's say the label wasn't there, then we can look at the plate structure. And this particular tube, when you look at the plate, you can make out whether it's original or not. You may not be able to assess the exact year or month if it's missing the label, but at least you'll be able to assess a good time period or decade that it's from, if not the exact year or month. So if you don't have the label, then this particular structure is of the early EL34s from Telefunkens. These small staple holes, there's 5 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're small. and this is a rectangular slot on the one side. This is from those late 50s to early 60s style. And as far as the getters are concerned, there's two ring getters, or two O getters, whatever you want to call them. And there's a telltale sign of a Tele where the ring and the rod meet. There's that indent on that ring where they attach. That's a proprietary, I would say, Telefunken design, and not found on any other manufacturer. That little indent there. Other manufacturers will just have the whole ring without that dent or that indent, and that's attached to the rod. So two ring getters, original Telefunken. That's how you could tell that it's original. Really great tube. I love this tube. The next one I have here is, you can see there's a slightly different design here. The logo went from up here to down here. It became a little bigger, and I don't see a date code down here either, but it says made in Germany. So now let's determine if we can see any other dates to help. Yeah, there it is. There is a date code here. So the date code has moved to the right here and more vertical. And we see the U again. That's Ulm. So that's a good sign. This is a West Germany tube. And deciphering the date, we can ignore the 03. The 90 should be flipped to 09. So this is the 9th day. And for the month, we look at the 3rd and the 5th. 09. So 9th month, 9th day, September 9th. And let's look at the year. We are looking at 3 for the year. So it could be 53, 63, 73. Again, we know that Telefunken didn't make these tubes in 73, so it can't be 73. It could be 63 because it came after this design with the flaps on the sides of the on the plate. This is actually called a winged plate because of the two flaps that make it look like wings on each side, and two holes in the plate. Original Telefunken design came after this tube. If this is 58, then this has to be 63. So yeah, 63, 9th September. And then when we look at the getters, you see the same exact design there with two ring getters, the indent that we talked about right there. I think the reflection is not helping, but there you can see it. There's the indent on the ring. Great tube. I've paired a couple of these on one channel with a couple of these. They sound very identical. There is no difference between these tubes sound-wise that I could tell. Now, coming to this tube here. Same Telefunken, made in Germany, and no date logo here. There are some numbers here, 2004914. 7-digit code, yes, but there is no U or a B, so it doesn't tell us that is Berlin. And how do I know it's an RFT? Well, RFT in the 70s produced a lot of EL34s for many different brands. You'll see the same tube with many different labels, and Telefunken EL34 is one of them. And the telltale sign of the RFT tube, first of all, is up on the top. This dimple top gives away the RFT. If you look at the tops here on the West Germany original Telefunkens, there are no dimples. On this one, the dimple is quite apparent, and it's got these 4 holes that are quite big compared to the small holes on the original Telefunkens. 1, 2, 3, 4 large holes, and big staples on the back that you can see, and 2 rectangular slots on the side. And this is an RFT manufactured tube. They manufacture it for many different folks. When you look at the ring, the getter, single ring, single large ring, and that indent is missing, and that's how you know that's not a Telefunken design. That's not the original Telefunken tube. So that's how you can tell that this is not an original Telefunken West Germany tube. It is an East Germany RFT tube. Now this here is another counterpart of the same tube here. You can see another dimple quite prominent, and this one actually has the label missing, ironically, because it's used. But you could see faintly that this actually says Siemens. This is a Siemens EL34 tube. And by the way, something about Siemens, they actually never manufactured their own tubes when it comes to EL34. They never manufactured an EL34. If you see a Siemens labeled EL34, almost guaranteed that that was not by Siemens. That was produced by some other manufacturer like Philips or RFT or whomever, and it just has a Siemens label on it. So two large rectangular holes on the plate on each side, single ring getter up on the top, and that's how you can identify that these two tubes are identical. It's very similar design. Four large staple holes, two rectangular slots in the plate, and single large ring up on the top. Now, this is also a great sounding tube. Just I prefer these over this one, but also a great tube, great backup. I have a quad of this as well that I use and I like. And real quick about Siemens. Now you see here two different Philips and Siemens mini watts that I have, and I just told you that Siemens never made an EL34. So how can I tell if it was some other manufacturer that made this particular tube? Well, if I look around, there is an edge code. Edge code of XF4. It may be hard to tell on the camera. LOL. And XF4 is a Mullard designation, and LOL, the 6-digit date code, is a Mullard code, I believe, from the 60s. I haven't decoded LOL yet. It's easy to do. I did it when I got the tubes, but I don't remember right now what it stands for. But you can see it's not stapled, it's welded plate design, and more slimmer rectangular slots on the sides, two of them, and up on the top you see this is D-getter. This is dual D-getter. Love the sound of this particular tube compared to the XF2 or XF3 ring getters on the Mullards. Now, what's interesting is this is a Philips mini watt tube. This is a Siemens tube, but they're actually the exact same tube. How do I know that? Because it's got the same XF LOL date code, edge code here, same double D getters, same bakelite. Everything about these two tubes are same. In fact, these two tubes were manufactured as the same batch in the same factory. So just going off of the labels does not give you enough information. If you have edge codes or date codes, that may help. And better yet, if you can understand and know the plate structure, internal plate structure, and the getter design on these tubes, that will get you way far in terms of acquiring the tube that you want. Very different looking tubes, but came out most likely within the same week. Well, LOL is actually the same week of manufacturing of the tubes. So same factory, same tubes, same exact tubes, different labels, and we know Siemens didn't make their own. Yeah, so just wanted to make a quick video talking about these NOS tubes, and just as a reference for myself as well. So if it can help, it will help some people figure out these tubes and make a better decision in terms of what they want and what they like, and no particular preference in terms of what's better or what's worse. It's not about what's better or worse. It's more about what do I like, what do I prefer. Some tubes do bass differently. Some tubes are more forward with the vocals. It really depends on what you're looking for. There's no bad tube. All of these tubes are really good. It really comes down to the preference in terms of what do you like and what do you want to have. So yeah, there you have it. These are some of the vintage NOS EL34s. Thanks.